We're going back to school with today's episode. We're talking about school libraries with Jill Sullivan-Bennin. Jill received a bachelor's degree in English education from Augustana College, a master's degree in reading from Western Illinois.University, and a certificate in school librarianship / library information specialist from Illinois State University. Now, Jill has been associated with the Sherrard Community School District located in Western Illinois since 2000. From 2000 until 2007, she taught junior high and later high school English. From 2007 to 2010, Jill was a district reading specialist before returning to the high school classroom where she stayed until 2014. Since 2014, Jill has been the district library media specialist overseeing library activities for all 4 buildings in her school district. Jill and her small staff of library aides have developed a robust library program, and as the only dedicated full-time library staff for the entire district, she definitely wears a lot of hats. Working in a small school district, especially one with a large geographical footprint like Sherrard's, think farmland, Western Illinois, has its own challenges and opportunities, which Jill shares with us. Now, I was excited to speak with Jill, not just because we've known each other forever and we're long overdue to catch up, but also because museums, archives, and libraries are so often lumped together when we think about community engagement and involvement, public services and public spaces, legislation, and of course, funding. But in my mind, the school library is definitely in a category of its own. Now, my professional experience with libraries is quite limited. I worked at a circulation desk for a little bit a long time ago. I was a university archivist and rare book librarian, also quite a long time ago. But admittedly, with a background in museums and archives work, the library tasks that I learned, I pretty much learned those on the job. So needless to say, I learned a lot during today's conversation, and I have a feeling that many of you will too. We had a wonderful talk about what school librarians do all day, from the administrative behind the scenes work to developing and managing the library collections for grades pre-K through 12th, to training and managing staff across multiple sites, and of course, Jill's creative and fun outreach efforts to not only encourage students, but also faculty to utilize the library's many fantastic resources. She came up with some great programs. It's a cool conversation. And of course, one last thing before we begin, the disclaimer I always read: the views and opinions expressed by the guests on this podcast do not reflect the views of their respective employers. We are just having a conversation here. And with that, let's begin. Jill and I were just talking about how she transitioned from being a classroom English teacher to working in the library for the district. Jill, you started your career as an English teacher. I've known you for a long time. That was no surprise to me that you became an English teacher. And how did that transition into library work really manifest for you?
Well, for me, I was a classroom teacher. I taught junior high for 5 years, and then I moved up to teaching high school English for a couple of years. During that time, I had gotten my master's in reading because I was always a bit of a precocious reader. I loved to read. But then I was encountering students that I realized didn't have those reading skills or that love for reading that I did. So I went back for my master's in reading because I realized I did not know how to help those kids. So I became, after doing that, I became a district reading specialist for a few years, then transitioned back into the classroom. And then when our district librarian retired in 2014, in some ways, I think sometimes when you don't know as much about a job as you should, sometimes that's a blessing because you think, I can do this. You have that almost naive confidence that maybe you don't later. This is my thought process. I knew she was retiring. She had talked to me about Illinois State has a librarian certification program. So I don't have an MLIS, but I do have 26, 28 hours worth of like grad school level library science schooling. And since I already had a master's degree, I thought that might be the route to go. My son was also pretty young at the time. So I applied to that program, and so I could say that when I was interviewing, if I even got an interview. But to me at the time, it was one of those moments where you think, what will I regret more? Not trying for this job or trying for this job. And to me at the time, it was clear that I would regret more not trying to be a librarian. It was one of those things that I felt like, oh, maybe I should have always realized this was where I was heading, but you don't always realize that that's like, I always loved the library as a kid, but I also think, like most people, I had a pretty narrow view of what a librarian does. Like I sometimes refer to this job as an iceberg, and I know there are a lot of jobs like that where people have this certain perception of it. Like they see 11% of your job and they think that's your entire job. Like,
Right.
oh, you check books out to kids, and maybe you read books to kids, and I'm at the junior high school most of the time, so they know that I also like check Chromebooks in and out to kids and do some of that paperwork. But they don't always know all of the layers or all of the other aspects of the job, like collection development and, which includes weeding book collections, because you can't keep every book that you have in the library forever, if it's
Right.
disgusting or if it's just like nobody's checked this book out for 7 years.
Someone used a
I'm not
piece of
going to
like
keep it.
cheese as a bookmark, kind of.
Yes, I did find a vape pen in a book one time.
Oh
Like,
no. Oh,
somebody used a vape pen as a bookmark. I just brought
oh
the vape down
good.
to the office. I was like, just gonna get this off the streets, but
Oh
it's
my gosh. Yikes.
like, um,
There's other duties as assigned for
yeah,
sure. And I find it very interesting. Knowing you personally, it comes as no surprise that you'd pursue a master's in reading. I don't think I know anyone else who has that degree though. And I love that you came to library work from having this expertise in reading, because back when I was the university archivist and a rare book librarian at a medical school 15 years ago. That was my biggest foray into library work. I was hired as an archivist, but I learned how to catalog on the job. So I also don't have an MLIS, a Master's of Library and Information Science. I have more of a museum studies degree. And I almost pursued an MLIS degree. I got accepted into the program and everything, but I was really turned off by a lot of the library curriculum. And I just ended up doing archives coursework and almost got a certification, and then left that behind because a lot of the library curriculum just was very IT related or just wasn't stuff I was interested in. You came to the field with this passion for reading, and now you kind of jumped in, and I assume a lot of this other kind of back end admin stuff was the big surprise, perhaps, of what you were going to be
yes,
dealing with a lot.
yes, and yeah, like I like ordering books and things like that, but there's also a whole like instructional, like I'm not a classroom teacher, but I still work with teachers a lot. I schedule classes into the library. I do. With my fifth, sixth building, I have developed like a library curriculum based on the standards that we have in Illinois through like they're called the ISAIL standards, but they're like our Association of Illinois School Library Educators has a set of standards that they put out, update every few years. So I use those standards to develop like a digital curriculum. So those students during their library time, there's like a 10-minute video lesson that has like a Google form that they do, because that was one way I could kind of have instruction that was somewhat uniform, because I do have aides in 3 out of my 4 buildings, but they're not supposed to write instruction.
Okay.
So if there's instruction, I'm supposed to be writing the instruction. Now, some of the aides do great projects and do things, independently that are fantastic and have created great library communities in their buildings. But if it's something like ordering the books, that goes through me, or if it's weeding the collection, that goes through me, or like I said, instruction types of things. So I never really know what any given day is going to look like a lot of the time. Like, I might know I have lessons that day, or I might know a class is coming to check books out, but then there's also the incidental things like, oh, the copier is down that's in the library and I have to fix it, or this kid has come in with a broken screen on their Chromebook. So I have developed procedures for, like, the Chromebook comes to the library, I check them out a loaner, so they still have something for the day to use, and then I fill out a request that goes to the tech department. So I'm kind of like the intermediary. I don't fix the Chromebooks, but they come through me. And I know there are school librarians that fix the Chromebooks too. Like, it's one of those jobs that I feel like every school library is also going to look different, like in terms of what they do. I started a teen advisory board several years ago. Like, I started one before the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, it kind of went away, and then we brought it back after. So we do in my building, we do lunchtime programs because it works best for us. I know some places do after school programs in their library or other things like that, where they have kids there for hours after school.
Oh.
For me, lunchtime programs are kind of a nice fit because kids can come down from lunch. It's a slightly different environment. And I only let them eat lunch in the library if it's a program day.
Okay.
I have tried to let kids eat lunch in the library before, and it tends to turn into a real problem. It just, so I know that there are people that handle it beautifully. I just have not quite cracked that. But that also kind of incentivizes the kids to come to programs, because then it's like a special thing.
Sure.
And I will definitely lean into marketing. Like, usually there's a fundraiser in the building where they'll sell carnations for Valentine's Day, for instance. Yeah. So after they're done selling carnations, then my flyers go up going, did you forget it's almost Valentine's Day? And then kids can come to the library during lunch on that day and make Valentines for their friends or their parents or whatever they want to do, which is nice for a couple of reasons. Those kids that can't afford to buy their friends carnations still have a way to, like, make something. Those kids that didn't know they were getting a carnation from a friend, like the first year I did it, more and more kids started coming down during lunch because I think they were like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this from this friend. And so they were like, okay, I can quickly do this. Cute. But I also kind of like doing those craft programs, especially at the junior high school level, because kids don't get a lot of unstructured craft time. Like, once they get to that level, and that's, they might at home, I'm not saying that, but it's kind of nice to see kids problem solve and try to figure stuff out and work with each other to, like, solve even a basic problem. Like, I don't know how a tape runner works, or, things like that.
Yeah, and it's really introducing kids to the idea that the library is a fun community space and not just a place they have to go to do a research project that they might not want to do. Getting those kids to feel comfortable in the space. Like, we have a great public library system in our town, and they do a lot of crafts. My son doesn't care about crafts, so I'm not paying attention to that. But whenever I look at the schedule for my daughter's age, elementary school age, everything is just booked instantly, so it's even hard to get her into one of those. So to be able to just have a come one, come all with you at the school, and then, oh yeah, I need to check out that book, or I need to renew a book while I'm here. It sounds like a fantastic way to do kind of outreach. And you had also mentioned before that you do little videos as part of the announcements at your school for book talks to get kind of your face in front of them and recommend things that everyone might benefit from.
I admit I don't put my face on camera for my videos, but I do. I put the book cover up. Like, I do like a title screen with the book title, the book, and then I record my voice like in GarageBand.
Oh,
So like I
cool.
always make a
Okay.
spreadsheet every year for my book talks, and then or a Google sheet. And then every time I read a book, I just write like a little teaser kind of trailer. Just enough information to get them interested in the book. And then and I usually start with like the state award books. So like in
Oh,
Illinois, we
yeah.
have the Lincoln list and we have the Caudle list that would cover junior high and high school.
Sure.
And then I make book talks that are between like 15 seconds and a minute for a couple of reasons. One, I really don't feel like people want to watch a video longer than that a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And two, I'm putting in I used to do 3 a week, now I do 2 a week on the morning announcements.
Hmm.
So I don't want it to be a thing that teachers are like, oh my God, like I can't take 4 minutes out of my class for you to do this book talk. But
Right.
30 seconds, that's in like an acceptable amount of time. And then I display them on the circulation desk. And it's usually kind of funny because I've had junior high kids especially come in and go, do you have the book from the TV? Because they're like,
They're
they show the
listening.
announcements, so I'm like, all right. So
Oh, that's
I think it's
great.
funny.
And I think your experience having started in the classroom too, what will kind of catch their eye and catch their attention, and that's just a fantastic addition. My son in middle school, they watch CNN 10, I guess it
Hmm.
is, and he
Yep.
tells me all about that. I didn't get to do any of that when I was a kid, but it's like these little snippets that they really really catch on to. Yeah, it sounds like you're doing some fantastic outreach. It sounds like you have a lot on your plate, though. You have 4 buildings with 3 aides.
Hmm.
How does that work? Do you have a schedule where you're Monday at the school and Tuesday there? And oh,
I am mostly at the junior senior high, and especially now that
okay,
they've cut the aid from the junior senior high, I'm mostly at that building. I do sometimes I'll do like Google Meets with the aides from the other buildings, and we're trying to like build in a more of a concrete structure for that so we can have those conversations as a group because they're all spread out to different buildings too. And even getting like
really?
one time a year we get together for like a half an hour to an hour, and the logistics of coordinating that meeting are ridiculously complicated because all those aides also have other, like some of them do lunch duty, some of them do recess duty, some of them
Oh my
do
gosh.
breakfast. So like they're not in their libraries all the time, and trying to line up everybody's schedules so that we can meet. And my district is large geographically. It's like 180
Okay.
square miles.
Oh
So
wow.
getting everybody together, there's travel time. I do go to the other buildings. I'm not saying that, but I try to I schedule it in. Then I have to close the high school library. I make sure I put that on my schedule. I send out a schedule every week of what's happening in the library. And then if that day we are not going, the library will be closed, I send out another follow-up email. Remember, the library is closed. Even just because for me, it's a safety concern. So I'm
Sure.
like, just remember, lock the doors behind you because my library at the high school, the building is a 712 building. And the library it's a beautiful space, but it is in the middle of all the core classes. Like there's a hallway that goes around the library. So I'm in
Okay.
the middle, which is, like I said, great, but there's also a copy in there. So I've said, I know as soon as I leave, somebody's going to need copies. They're going to
Right.
unlock the door
Oh.
and then forget to relock the door. People have actually been much better about it than I cynically assumed they would be. I'll be honest. I turn off all the lights. I put libraries closed. I know this is controversial. We did get cameras on the upper level of the library this year just because I thought it is such a big space. It's not, I don't have a problem with,
So it's a
but
2-story
it's
space
not, well,
or like
okay.
a loft or
It's, well, it's kind of funny to describe it as upstairs, downstairs, but there's the quote unquote upper level where the circulation desk is. All of our tables are up there. Graphic novels, I moved so that they're on that level so that when kids cut through the library, that's like a quick, hey, I
oh
want a
yeah.
graphic novel. I can grab it. I also have like a puzzle table up on that level and like coloring sheets. So like for passive programming, kind of what you're talking about, like getting kids in for any reason and having that positive association, I feel like is good. Then we have in the middle of the library space, we have a ramp that has big like walls on it. The building was built in 78. It has a real, this was built in 78 vibe.
Yeah.
So it has like this brown brick ramp wall in the middle of the library, and then there are stairs on either side, just 3 steps. Like, but the bottom
Okay.
part is sunken, like how the 70s had a
Yeah.
lot of those sunken living rooms.
Split level library. A
Yes,
little
so
bit.
it's like that.
Library.
And all the stacks
Okay.
pretty much are on that bottom level. And then we have some tables that have like screens that kids could plug their Chromebooks into, like collaboration station type of things
Oh, that's
down there.
neat. So, as you said, you have a big geographic area, but you're still a relatively small district. So you have a
Yes.
junior, senior high, 7th through 12th grade, and then are the other 3 buildings, are those elementary then?
Yes, we
Or
have one building is pre-K through 4. One building is kindergarten through 4. And then the last building is a 5-6 building,
oh,
which
okay.
for collection development, I think is the most challenging building.
I was about to ask about how you manage all those.
That's a tricky one in terms of collection development, because I know there are kids that come over once they get to the junior high, they're like, oh my gosh, I've been wanting this book for so long. So you have to have books that are still kind of upper elementary in that collection and lower junior high, but you can't go, like it's a pretty tricky group to buy for, because you don't want to get too mature with that collection
Right.
or too baby. Like, so that's sometimes for only being 2 grade levels. That is, I like that building a lot. It's a great building, but it's a tricky one sometimes for collection development.
I can completely understand. Like, my son just finished 6th grade, so we're in a 6 through 8 middle school, and he can read just fine. And they really challenge him in our town. The
Hmm.
school reading curriculum, I'm really impressed with. But when he goes home, he still wants to just read Dogman for the 54th time. Which, if
Hmm.
I was making a library just for 5th and 6th graders, some kids are obviously, as you would know, going to be a little behind on reading. Some kids are reading War and Peace, and some kids just want to have those easy reads accessible to them, even if they aren't the most challenging. So, do you have duplicates then? Like, will you have the same books at the K through 4 as you might at the 5-6 as
There are some things like
overlaps?
Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I have at every library, K through 12. It's still super duper popular. It's always out.
Right.
Dogman I have at both the K4 buildings. I don't have it at the 5-6. I have only started to get requests for it at the 5-6 building. And part of the reason I admit I haven't done that, we do a graphic novel section there.
Right.
But I think Dogman is up to book 13, 14 now, 12, something like that. And so I'm like, if it's just 1 or 2 kids, I'm not sure if I want to, like that's a big
Right.
investment and they would want all the books. So sometimes I do make almost a fiscal decision collection wise where
Right.
I'm like, well, okay, that's a really, but then sometimes I'll try to, like when I do those digital lessons with the 5th, 6th building, at the end of every form I say, do you have any questions? And then every few weeks I do like a Q&A video where I'll like have my face on camera and just go, partly because I had a kind of hilarious situation where like I'd been doing these video lessons and it was like October and I had a kid ask a question on that, like, who are you? Who is making these? And I was like, oh, they don't, like I would be in the building, but I would be in and out and I would see some classes, but not all. And so then I started saying, putting my face on camera for those types of videos so that they would
Sure.
know who I
Yeah.
was, and especially when they come up. But it also helps when they ask, can we get this book? Can we get that book? And then I can address some of those questions. Like, this is why, yes, I'll put this. And I keep a spreadsheet for every building that their aide also has access to. So if a teacher or a student asks for a book, it goes on a spreadsheet for that budget year. And
Okay.
then I'll look at reviews and see kind of age ranges that it's recommended for. And like, so that if I'm reading reviews for a book and it says recommended for 7th grade and up, I'm not going to buy it for Matherville.
Right.
If it says recommended 6 through 8, then I might get it for that building. But, like, so sometimes I try to look at those and see what the reviews are saying and make sure I'm making a good decision for that building. And then I can talk to the students too in those videos, even just like this, I am ordering this. It does take me a while to do book orders, but like I will work on getting more soccer books for your collection because it's been a popular request, or I am working on getting more cookbooks for your collection because I know they're popular, those types of things. So
That's fantastic because being able to do these video calls or even just the outreach, growing up decades and decades ago, I remember we would go to the library to learn how to research, and the librarian would tell us how to do that. And then that was the end of that. I don't remember, and I was never as I was a big reader, but I guess I just buy books. I wouldn't really go to my school library to get them. I don't really remember my librarians. I don't remember there being an opportunity to really tell them what I wanted or hear from them, have any kind of outreach. So even though you're running around between all these buildings and scheduling with these aides, and you're not in front of your students as often as the library staff perhaps should be, just because of who's available when. It sounds like you're really finding cool ways to get out and form those relationships, especially now that you're putting your face on screen. So if they do see you in the hallway, they'll say, "Oh yeah, that lady." So that's really great. And I bet that your experience as a teacher and your experience as someone who has studied reading at such a high level really helps you come up with those ideas and make those successful. We also, when we were kind of discussing what we were going to talk about, we touched on the fact that we have this really old school idea of what a librarian is, it's a woman with her long hair and her button-up sweater and her long skirt, being quiet and shushing people. At least that's my old school idea of it. And I feel like back in the day, that was probably a pretty good stereotype because all there was books and people wanted to read the books in peace. And now that so many librarians are not librarians or media specialists, you have such a large role in media, things that make noise, things that are fun. Do you feel if your students or even other staff, faculty come in, do you feel like they feel like they should have this kind of quiet vibe about them, or do they feel comfortable just?
I think it's really interesting because the librarian before me, who left the collection in great shape and I got along with really well and did a lot of great work and helped teach research and things like that, definitely had a policy where the kids couldn't cut through the library between classes. Like, she always kept the doors closed and then kids could come in with classes and it was a quieter space. I keep the doors mostly open and I kind of encourage kids to cut through because I feel like, again, like we talked about, the more positive interactions. Now, are there days that I'm crabbier than I should be? Yes. I'm not saying every interaction I've ever had with a student is perfect because it's not. But I keep trying to, try to be reflective and go, okay, you didn't handle that well. How should you be handling that? And I've been trying to do a lot more like social emotional reading, things like that, just to work on my practice too. But I occasionally still have a staff member that was there. And I've been in the library for 11 years now. I still occasionally have a staff member come through and say, "I'm sorry for cutting the library." And I'm like, you can cut through. It's fine. Unless it's closed for some reason, or like we do a big Veterans Day. We don't close on Veterans Day. We have like a big Veterans Day assembly. And then we have a reception in the library before. So I think this year we had over 100 people. Like, my library max capacity is like 225.
Oh, wow.
I think we had well over 100 people, like veterans from the community, in for the reception this year. In that case, yes, I'll probably have the doors closed just because there's an other event going on, but I want people to interact. So I still think it's kind of funny when people come in and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't quiet." And I'm like, it's okay. Like, if I'm teaching a lesson and I'm working with an entire class, I would appreciate it if people aren't like having a super loud conversation. But if it's an, I don't have a really big problem with there should be some noise in the library. It shouldn't be a completely quiet space. And I'm lucky enough that the library at the high school at least is big enough that there kind of are different zones. Like I have some side rooms that sometimes if a kid comes in, they're like, "Hey, I need to record for Spanish class." I can just go in this side room and close the door. And then when you're done, come back out. But that can give them that like quiet, totally quiet situation they need. Or, I'm taking a test for my dual credit enrollment class or something. Can I go in this side room? I have no problem. Like we try to make those different spaces as well. But we also do things like a few years ago, one of the math teachers approached me about having the big coffee maker in the back room of the library. And I said, sure. And we just do it. It's very casual because I don't have the bandwidth to be like you can only drink coffee if you've given me $5. Like, I don't. So I'm just like, bring in coffee, bring in creamer. If you want coffee, drink it. I'm not going to police this. Like,
yeah, sure.
So then, so I'll make coffee, but that also kind of like what we were talking about with like puzzles and stuff, that gets teachers in that wouldn't necessarily come in. The copier is the same way. And so sometimes I'll have quick conversations with people that way that I wouldn't necessarily have had because everybody is so busy. Everybody is trying to take care of their own classes and, running around, that those quick conversations sometimes I feel like are very valuable. And, so that's, and that actually led to a really interesting collaboration I did this spring where one of the junior high math teachers came down and said, "Would you mind keeping track of how many pots of coffee you make every day in here?" Just a tick mark.
Yeah.
And then she used it with her junior high class for statistics.
Oh.
So I just put it on the fridge, and every time I'd make a pot of coffee, I'd make a tick mark, and at the end of the month, I'd scan it and send it to her. But, sometimes those little interactions can lead to bigger outcomes.
Oh, I love that. That's so creative too. And students always know that their teachers drink a lot of coffee. And every elementary school teacher's like wish list, if we see what they like for the room teachers to buy gifts or whatever, it's always Starbucks, So Brianna, my daughter knows, oh yeah, my teacher loves her coffee. So that's funny. But yeah, it's another creative way to get people literally in the door. Yeah, I don't hear too much about my kids. They go to the library. My son, it's a funny story. My son doesn't like to eat lunch at school. He needs to eat lunch, but he doesn't like to. And also, it's just so loud. It's just giant, boisterous cafeteria space. So we knew he hadn't been eating lunch for a while because for whatever reason. And I got a call from the counselor one day saying, "Oh, did you know, your son isn't eating lunch?" We said, "Yeah, we know." "Well, he's been hanging out in the library during lunch." I said, "That's cool." And she said, "Well, actually," and this was earlier in the year. She said, "Actually, this is a perk that or not a perk. This is eating or going to the library during lunch is something we offer to students who are doing Ramadan. So it's to accommodate the students who are fasting so they don't have to be in the cafeteria." My son somehow found out that kids were going to the library during lunch and just kind of signed himself in. And the counselor called me and was like, "Do you?" I said, No, we don't do Ramadan. He just doesn't want to eat lunch in the cafeteria." So then after that month ended, then he had an arrangement with the teacher to be in his classroom or her classroom during lunch. But I just thought that was just such a creative way that my son got around being in the cafeteria, just playing, doing whatever in the library. And that it was a great thing that they offered that the kids who shouldn't be in a cafeteria surrounded by food during those weeks. And it was nice and quiet in there. Do you
Yeah.
do so you do everything. You deal with the administration, you have staff that you're trying to coordinate with, and the staff is sounds like running around their schools doing lunch duty and recess duty
hmm
and um wow, that's a lot to manage because of course you want to make sure the libraries are available as much as possible during the
Right.
day.
Right. And I mean, we definitely, I sometimes think it's you do what you can with what you have, like, fortunately, even going into this year, we had an aide that was going to be retiring, and she said, we should probably have like a policy and procedure manual. I probably, yes, that's smart. So we did, that was a big project that we started writing it the year before. So I have like a pretty lengthy policy procedure manual, and I was so glad to have it this year because then I had a new aide I had to train at that building. So I'd close down the high school library and go there. But then also, at least, yes, she could always call. We can do like a meeting or something like that. Um, and but at least she had that, like, here's how to do something. So like if she didn't know how to run a form or something or report, she could look at that at least as a starting point. So that has been helpful too. I also, one of the things is sometimes the aides that are hired, who I think they're all fantastic people. They're all really good at like creating a welcoming environment in their space and getting, kids interested in different books, which is really, that's primary. Sometimes they're a little bit tech averse,
Oh,
and that is really a big part of library jobs is the
sure.
technology. So what I have learned is it is best to either do like a Google Meet and say, okay, show me your screen, show me what's going on. Because if somebody's on the phone with me and I can't see their screen, I don't know what's happening.
Sure, yeah.
Or if they go, I don't remember how to do this, I just go make a quick video. Like I use Screencastify all the time. I just make a quick like Screencastify video and send it to them because then they can see where I'm clicking on my screen.
Sure.
Like if I'm in Alexandria or card catalog system and I'm trying to figure something out, usually I try to figure it out before I make the video, but because sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, delete that one, start over because that did not work the way I thought it would.
Yeah.
But I have found doing that, and then I have been using, it is an AI tool somebody told me about called Scribe. I will occasionally use that because what it'll do is record a lot, like if I make a screencast, it will record all the steps I took and what I clicked on, and then you can edit
Oh,
it. So I go back and go, okay, I don't need it to say that same thing 4 times because I clicked through. I
oh,
can edit it
interesting.
and then download the PDF and send that to them too. I don't
Huh,
use that tool a huge amount, but it does save me a lot of time because it basically takes all the screenshots for me, and doing a screenshot guide takes forever. So I have
sure.
used that a little bit too.
And then just stick that in with the procedures and policies and procedures guide in the back, and you're going to have a full um, encyclopedia of FAQs that I mean, seriously, you might as well just keep that PDF and file it
Well, and I think
away.
what I think I usually do, I put the PDF, like I think I started putting them in like guides, and then I'll hyperlink it into the document so they
Oh,
can
sure.
click on it
Yeah.
and get to it. Because otherwise I'm like, this is too long. But if I make a video or if I make a scribe guide or something like that, I will link it right into that document, like you're saying, so that they can get to it again.
This side of things is so fascinating. So as I said, I have experience working in a university library. Everyone has their advanced degrees. Everyone knows what they're doing, whether they're in a library loan librarian or the acquisitions, or they're all doing their own thing, cataloging librarian. And then I have a little occasional kind of weekends experience years and years ago working a circulation desk at a public library. So I kind of had an idea of the many behind the scenes roles that librarians
hmm
would would do that you might not have expected, all the administrative stuff. But what I didn't expect going into this conversation is how much training you're doing to help your staff. Because I'm assuming that most of them are not coming in with robust library backgrounds, it seems like. So the fact that you're doing all of these things and you kind of have to be the resident expert on everything from daily operations to IT, and then find a way from afar often to really train your staff. That's time consuming, but B, that also lets you really cultivate the kind of department and unit that you want across all of these buildings, which I'm sure takes a lot of time out of your day. Hopefully you have some good success. It sounds like your training is successful with this.
Well, and I will say those aides are really pretty self-sufficient for the
Hmm.
most part. Like they really do run day-to-day operations in their buildings and are very helpful. And even things like this year, I admit because I also had to take over all processing this year, which because when they eliminated that aide position, she was doing all the processing.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
that was probably the biggest adjustment this year, was getting
And can
used to
you
like.
can you explain exactly what the processing
So
entails?
when the books come in from, and I do a combination of like, I subscribe to some levels of Junior Library Guild, so every month I get some new books. And then I also do like book orders from like Bound to Stay Bound or Follett or something like that. So that I now always make sure I get the MARC records. And then of course you modify those MARC records for your particular um, building. But so basically the box of books comes in, I unload it to make sure everything came in that it says on the sheet. Um, and then I will like sort books out by building and put them on I have like different shelves in the back room, so I know these books go to this building and these books go to this building. Then I put all the records into that school's card catalog, like OPAC system, or like online card catalog basically. And then I could go into each record, make sure it's correct, like has all the right information. If it's part of a series, I'll make sure I've started adding the series this year. I started a series spreadsheet just because I don't want to have to look up like anytime I put in a book in a series, I don't want to have to look up the whole series and figure out the order again. So, make sure that information is
Sure.
correct. Then I print out barcode labels and spine labels. Some of the books come with spine labels. Some have a lot of times the books will come in with like a 741.5 for graphic novels, but we put GB on our spines for those instead. So
Hmm.
I'll make a new thing. I do have a couple of paraprofessionals that are, well, at least this year they gave me one that was in 1 or 2 hours a day. So I had
Oh,
her cut apart my barcodes and things like that in there. And then I need to stamp the book, check the books, make sure that they're fine, didn't come in with any problems, stamp them, do that internal processing, write down their barcode number inside.
right.
And then we cover the books either with Mylar cover if they're a hardcover book, or with this glorified contact paper
Yeah.
if they're a paperback. Now, I will say I've had a couple people come in and I've trained them to cover the books as much as because that's something I can go, okay, these books are done except for that. And then when they're in, they can cover those books, and that does save me quite a bit of time. That's also a skill that that training doesn't take that long, and the level of training it takes for the outcome that it saves me is definitely worth it to me. I
Yeah.
think sometimes, and I'm sure you've encountered this, and I feel like the person you interviewed on the other episode mentioned this, people have this concept of oh, the library is not staffed enough, just get volunteers. Okay, but then I have to train the
Right.
volunteers. So you have to be what tasks am I comfortable with a volunteer doing? Like checking in and out of books, I'm fine with that. Obviously, I always have to talk with them about you cannot talk about what anybody has checked out. You have to keep these records private. You can't divulge any of that. And I do recruit student aides at the junior high school.
Hmm.
And I've had some good student aides that are in like for an hour a day,
Hmm.
so they can check in and out, which helps me because then I can get down and talk to students about what books they're looking for, or I can do a little task, like
How
I
does
can be
that work
processing
with
books while
their
that's happening.
How does that work with their schedules if they can get out for an hour?
Usually it's what I do, what I did this year is I always do a library orientation at the very beginning of the year, like a slide deck, like here's the library classroom, here's reminder of policies and procedures. If you're coming in from study hall, you have to sign in on this clipboard, if you're, that kind of stuff. And this year I added a slide about joining the teen advisory board and also about being a student aide. I was like, if you have a study hall during the day and you want to come in
Okay.
and be a library aide that hour, you can. So it's just kids that have a study hall that want to come in and help. I had a lot of more students at the beginning of the year, and then semester changed, and quite a few of them, their study hall changed, or they couldn't do it anymore. And then the trick with that is I always say, if you have homework to do that first.
Right.
But so I'll have them do things like check books in and out. I occasionally have a student that will be able to shelve or is interested in learning, because that shelving is one of those skills. Kids don't know how to shelve. Kids don't understand alphabetical order anymore. And I'm not
Oh,
saying that in like a pejorative, like these kids
yeah.
kind of thing. I feel like when I was a kid, if I didn't know how to spell a word, the teacher would be like, go look it up in the dictionary. I mean, I
Right.
admit I was always like, well, if I don't know how to spell it, I'm not going to find it. But having to engage with a physical print dictionary did teach me the concept, or made me internalize that alphabetical order concept
Right.
in a way that students don't need anymore. They don't know the word, they look it up. Google can get
Right.
you, they can get usually close enough that it'll give them the word. Um, so that's the first hurdle, like teaching kids how alphabetical order works, and saying it's okay if you sing the alphabet song. I still sing the alphabet song when I'm down there shelving. Um, and then, so sometimes kids will shelve. If I'm doing like a promotional thing, I'll have kids put up flyers around the building. Those are all tasks that I'm totally fine with a volunteer doing. But that's another level of getting a volunteer doesn't solve all the problems. You still have to train the volunteer. You still have to figure out what tasks, like what's the cost benefit analysis of training this person on this task versus if they're only going to be there for an hour a week,
Right.
like what's useful for them to do.
And then I'm sure you've had students who are just kind of killing time. And then I'm sure you've had students who just love it and this is where they want to be. So you
I
kind of have to,
have, yes, definitely. I had a student that was a freshman this year who was amazing. Learned how to shelve, would check books in and out, loved it when we had a class coming in because she loved doing it, like helped me organize the craft jumble. That's what I called the side room that has both craft supplies in it, because I'm like, it's not, I feel like calling it a craft room is a little grand for how jumbled everything is right now. So she like helped me organize it. So sometimes you get a student like that who is awesome and just will do all kinds of things.
that's great that you are able to accommodate that. But yeah, volunteers of any age, of any skill level, they take time and management and then scheduling. If all of a sudden you're expecting them in, but they have a big homework assignment, that can get in the way. You have so much going on. One of the interesting things that I was curious about is you're very active in kind of unique groups in your industry. You gave me a bunch of acronyms of different organizations you're involved with that aren't necessarily the big national ALA groups. They seem to be more
Mm-hmm.
specialized. They more local or more exactly what you need to kind of be in this professional network, even though you're the only kind of,
Mm-hmm.
real top librarian in your entire district. It seems like let's see, there are a number of them here. It sounds like you interact with a lot of other people who are in similar situations of you kind of being the lone librarian or being in smaller districts. Would you like to just kind of share those groups or what you get out of them or how you commiserate
Sure.
together? I don't know.
There's So I did join ISLE, which is the Association of Illinois School Library Educators. I actually flipped to make sure I got that right because I think I said it backwards the other time.
Acronym.
And that's just the statewide organization. And that is interesting because it makes sense. Most of the school librarians are in the Chicago suburbs because that's where most of the population
Sure.
is, in the city or in the suburbs. But there are times where I feel like, okay, there are things we can talk about that we definitely understand, but when you're in more than one building, sometimes they don't always get that, or you have to be okay with you're not going to do all of the things in one year. You're going to have to, okay, this year I'm going to try to focus on this and build this up, or, this year I'm going to do this.
Right.
A few years ago, I started attending networking meetings through I should have written this one down. Oh, the Illinois Technology Center started having a librarian networking meeting because one of their staff members used to be a school librarian. And that was a really helpful group because you do feel very siloed, like you're the only one, and you're like, I need other people to talk to about this.
Sure.
So they started having monthly, basically Zoom calls where anybody could just get on and then they would talk about different topics. So that was really, really helpful. And then I think a few people from that and that were in ISLE started having a conversation about, should we have a group? Because there are chapters in ISLE that are geographical. There's not really one in my area right now, but we should have one for people that are district librarians that are in the same situation as I am. So we called it LAM, Librarians Assigned to Multiple Buildings. And then we started to meet once a month, kind of like that other networking group. And sometimes we only have 3 or 4 people, but I get so much value out of those meetings just because it's people in the same situation.
Sure.
I even had, as a result of that, actually this year, I had Rails, which is Reaching Across Illinois Library System. They had a Rails representative come into one of our meetings and was talking about how they can do site visits and give you support. So I had them come out and do a site visit. I was in one of those networking meetings, and a librarian who's in an adjoining district to me popped in and was like, I'm really struggling and now I'm in this situation. So I invited her over to my library and we had a really great conversation. She just came over and we talked for an hour and a half. And I think she left feeling like, oh, you don't have to do huge things. You can do small things that are outreach.
Sure.
I think sometimes with advocacy, because that's such a big part of the profession, they're constantly talking about you have to advocate for yourself, you have to do all of this. And some days I admit that I feel a little too middle-aged and Midwestern to feel super comfortable with that advocacy piece. Always, I feel like one of those noodle things outside of a car dealership, come over here, okay. It gets kind of exhausting sometimes.
For sure.
But I think what I've learned from some of that networking is just do small things and try to be consistent and try to keep reaching out. If something doesn't work, that's okay. This year or last spring, one of the kids in my tab wanted to do a Star Wars trivia program. Now, I will admit that I've seen quite a few Star Wars movies, mostly because I was in band, and at the time, at least, it felt like that was a prerequisite. Somebody would make you watch the Star Wars movies if you hadn't seen them, when I was in high school. But I'm not an expert by any means. They were not my top thing. So what I said to him was, yes, we can do that at lunch, but you are writing the questions. Yeah. Because I am not going to anger a bunch of Star Wars fans. If I write the questions, it's going to be a picture of Yoda, and the question will be who's this?
Yeah, that's right.
So he wrote all the questions this fall. We made a Kahoot. It was not a huge lunch program, but the kids that did come loved it and had a great time. And it was some kids that had never come to a library program.
Oh,
And then
fun.
they came to more throughout the year because they enjoyed that one. Or like we did, so then somebody else said, can we do a Disney trivia one? So we did Disney trivia, but we kind of expanded it to Disney properties. So it was
Okay.
like, so I asked questions, like just a few questions, like about Pixar movies, and then a few questions about um, National Geographic, and a question
Wow.
like anything that like, so that, and then kids had a great time at that because it wasn't just like we're only going to ask questions about like Disney princesses or something like that. Like we're
Sure.
going to
Yeah.
use so. But yeah, so doing different things like that and trying to listen to what the students are saying they'd be interested in,
Hmm.
you know. And sometimes you start something that you can't continue with because of staffing or something like that. Like last year I did not last, 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was witnessing teachers were in the library talking about the books they were reading. And I thought, I I like seeing that enthusiasm for what people are reading, and they don't all have to be reading the same thing. I struggle sometimes with book clubs because I feel like not everybody wants to read the same book or it doesn't hit everybody the same. So I started something called the Just for Fun Reading Club. It only ran a year. We never had huge numbers, but some of the kids that came to that now come to all my programs. And one kid was like, "Can we meet more?" We would just get together at lunch and talk about what we were reading. Not everybody has to read the same thing. Everybody has to do this, but I feel like that is one of the hallmarks of an adult reader is they'll talk about what they read, and not everybody has to read the same thing. So I feel like if we can build in some of those authentic types of reading experiences, like just talk about what you're reading and have a place that you can do that, I think that is one of those ways to kind of encourage literacy, especially when you get to junior high and high school and you don't always have time to read a book for pleasure. And there's so many things going on that it gets difficult.
Yeah, English class is book club, whether you want it to be or not.
Right.
I'll
Yeah.
admit, I've only been in a book club one time, and it was I was trying to meet new people. I was new to the area, and I was so stressed about finishing this book that I didn't want to read on time. And then the book I don't even remember the name of it. It got strange, and it still kind of haunts me. And I really wish I hadn't read it. It got very weird. And I went to the meeting and met all these people for the first time. And I was like, this is what I'm going to talk about. This really strange. You know what? I don't need the stress. I want to read what I want to read. I'll make friends a different way. And people have invited me to book clubs. Like, you know what? I, I won't read the book in time because it won't be one unless I'm picking all the books, you know. I don't need more homework.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
love that.
Well, I feel like, yeah, that was my thought too, is like the kids, I'm not going to start assigning books to kids. Like they don't have that kind of time a lot of the time. And what I want to pick for them, and honestly, even when I'm doing like reader's advisory, when I'm talking with students about what they want to read or when they're looking for a book, I have started saying this year, I didn't write the book, so I'm not offended if you don't like it. Like, come back, we'll find something else. Because I think sometimes they feel like, oh no, if I don't like this book, she's going to be like mad at me, or they don't want to.
Yeah.
And I have kids that are like, I, when I ask them, what do you like? They're like, I don't know. I'm like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a book you've liked. What what YouTube channels do you like? And then explain those YouTube channels to me because I don't know what you're talking about. But like, because I've even found in the last few years, I can't even go to what shows do you like because
Yeah.
kids are not consuming media in the same way.
Yeah.
So I'll just say, like, what kind of content do you like to watch? And then that gives me more of a sense of maybe where to go.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. I love all of the outreach that you've been doing. Now, do you get, I'm going to end pretty soon here. I don't want to keep you all day, but do you what's your summer like? Are you off? Are you building the collection? Are you
I
reading
try to
stuff?
take as I am reading stuff. Like right now, I'm
Reading.
reading.
I meant like weeding out the
Sorry,
weeding out the collection. But of
I
course
only
you're
work
reading stuff.
four. I only read. I only work 4 extra days. I have 4 extra
Oh, okay.
contract days. So I'll start going in probably next week, just like I might do like 2 Mondays in a row, and then I'll work another day like closer because we start early August. So,
Oh, wow.
but I have learned I need to complete, like, as much as possible. I need to take as much of the summer off because then I actually feel rejuvenated, restored. Like I have I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
There have been a couple summers where things are going on that are like heavy or difficult, or like there's a lot going on that's like not
Life.
great.
Yeah.
Life, or like if there's a career change, or like some sort of, like when they told me that my aid was being cut last year, that was a rough summer
Oh,
for me just because I was trying to figure out how I was going to make it work,
sure.
being down a staff member. And because I couldn't get out of my head enough, it was a harder year.
Hmm.
So this summer I've really been able to detach and relax, and I already feel like, okay, I'm starting to get ideas, I'm starting to get thoughts about things. So it's important for me to take that break.
Oh, sure. And that's a perk of being in the school system and not being in your public
Yes.
library.
Yes.
Where,
I know
where
this
the
is their heavy season right now, is like,
summer reading programs and whatnot.
yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, I think I'll go ahead and thank you. Unless there's more you'd like to talk about. I'm not sure what we might have missed. This was fantastic, just to catch up with you, to see what you do all day, to figure out all of this administrative um, stuff you have going on with all these buildings, and then how you've been able to find some smaller, more applicable local networking groups to really help you feel connected and bounce ideas off each other. I love the outreach you're doing with the students, and you're really getting to different students in ways that interest them, which I find fantastic. And I really hope you have a relaxing summer. And in a dream world, I'd love it if they would just hire lots more aides for you. So you can
Well,
do
thank
all
you
the
for having
things.
me on. I do appreciate it.
Thanks again to Jill Sullivan-Bennin for taking the time to speak with me. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. And before we go, I want to remind you that my name is Lindsay Smith with Exhibit Smith, and I am rethinking the way we save our stuff. I help people interpret, preserve, and better understand the objects that make up our world. If you have a lot of stuff, it might feel overwhelming, but believe it or not, I truly believe that artifact and heirloom preservation can be both easy and fun. In fact, I've developed a series of introductory level workshops and resources and fun content all about this, just to prove my point. Learn more about everything I'm up to over at exhibitsmith.com. You can also follow me at Exhibit Smith on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, that's a new one, and YouTube. And that's pretty new too. And one more thing before you go, I hope you will subscribe to my podcast if you're not already. Please tell everyone you know about it and share it with your network online. I'm having some great conversations, and I really want to help my guests' voices be heard. Thank you so much for listening. I'm already looking forward to the next episode.